So about 18 hours into the league opening yesterday afternoon, we finally got an answer on what Mickey Loomis's plan was for the 2025 offseason and the 2025 season, and it's freaking roll it back. We'll break it down so far. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So kind of, yeah, look, I'm a fan of Clint Eastwood Westerns. Good, Bad, and the Ugly is one of my favorite. And I think that's three categories that just kind of describe what's happening a couple of days considering the tampering period and all the stuff that was going on Monday and Tuesday. But technically, we're 19, 20 hours roughly into the new league, the 2025 league. And there was some good things. I mentioned one in my last video, the Dave and Godshaw trade. You know, I'm still looking at it as an reasonable contract that we inherited in the trade. We didn't do anything stupid by extending him or anything like that. Just let it ride. Not that bad. Broke down some video of him. He's a veteran run stopper. He does a lot of things that, quite frankly, our interior defensive linemen that we've had the last couple of years either didn't do, couldn't do very well, whatever. But he's going to help in that aspect. And he can do it across multiple spots on the interior of the defensive line. And whether we're going to go to a full transition to an odd front and a 3-4, or we're going to do some type of multi combo, whatever Staley's going to do, he gives you another guy that should be able to handle all that. And there's really no risk in what we did because it was a 2026 seventh round pick we gave up for him. So if it doesn't work out, it's not a huge, colossal, devastating loss like trading the first round pick that would have landed you Jalen Carter, for instance. So I think it was a good move. I think it was a good, solid move. And I think Justin Reed signing was a good, solid move. And again, another veteran, 28 years old. So he's kind of hitting his stride in the prime. Safety's been a position of need, and I think it's been kind of overlooked because we have so many needs on this team. When you look at the kind of the guys that were grouped in around his level, he was considered one of the top free agents. When you're looking at Holland, Bynum, Hafanga, and Morig, we got the best deal of the five with him because they're all about, from what I saw, 15 million to 17 million a year, multi-year contracts. We basically got Reed for 10 and a half. And the real bonus seems to be, from what everybody's kind of talking about him, that he's going to be a relatively good scheme fit for what Brandon Staley's likely wanting to do. Because he is primarily a box safety, strong safety guy, but he has Kansas City did an awful lot of this last year with that split safety look in the back. He can play back there. And specifically, I think everybody kind of likes his read and reaction, no matter where he's at, that he can figure stuff out there and he gets there real fast to make a play. We have been needing that for a while. And the good news about this is it kind of helps take some of that load off Honey Badger, which nice segue into, I think, the last good move. And as of this morning, this was one of the last pieces of news I got before I started filming. But bringing back Honey Badger and bringing back Cam, and kind of, they're more or less pay cuts. Now we know Honey Badger. We've kind of seen the deal that he signed. He cut his base salary down on about half, from it's going to be 6-something million to 3-something million. But he has an incentive-laden contract based on his playing time. So the more he plays, more of a bonus he's going to get on the back end of this year. I think that's a good move. I think it gives you the opportunity to get whatever Honey Badger can give to you and not have to overpay for it, quite frankly. And at his age, and we've talked about he last couple of years. Last year he was able to play through most of them, but he just point in his career where these kind of nagging injuries can kind of pop up on him at various times. So if that happens, again, you're not really overspending. So this is almost like a hope for the best, plan for the worst type scenario, which I'm good with, because both of these guys, Cam and Honey Badger, they're very important in that locker room, and we really need that this year in this transition phase. Cam, I don't know what the deal is. They're only reporting that he took some type of they're not even calling it a restructure. They keep calling it a rework. Implies some type of pay cut and avoids his salary, his 12.5 million salary for this year. 1.5 million of that was already guaranteed. If something wouldn't have been worked out by Friday, it was either cut him or if he was still on the roster, the whole thing was fully guaranteed. Sounds like they definitely avoided that. That's good because gives us a little more room to work with whatever it is we're trying to do. But that kind of brings us to the bad. Let's kind of start with the obvious. Losing Paulson Adebo, Will Harris, and MVS, I all kind of put in the bad category because it's three guys I would have liked to have brought back if we possibly could have pulled it off. But and it kind of had to be at the right price. And this is free agency, and stuff like that happens. Case of Adebo, Giants went after him hard, and I think at that point we were still trying to figure out how we were going to get to where we needed to be able to pay him that kind of money, or since it was tampering period, it might have just been a deal that worked out, before we even really had a chance to get involved. I don't really know, but he's moving on. Will Harris would have had to been at the right price, and so would have MVS. And I think we could have hit either one of them. Harris, I'm not sure, because what I looked at Harris was that after the Reed signing, it wasn't as bad not bringing him back, but I still look at him going, I'd still rather have him as our third safety. Because Jacob Hester said it best, that as much as Jordan Howden has flashed very occasionally, he's, not saying this in a bad way, it's been inconsistent with him. You don't see it nearly enough. And it's kind of hard when you had the ability to bring back a Will Harris and go, look, either Howden's going to work out or he's not, but we have Harris kind of as that buffer. May not be devastating, but, and same thing with MVS. He gives you a good veteran receiver to put out there. I think it was about $5.5 million. Seattle brought him over. Kubiak obviously wanted him. Again, it felt like we could have done something there, but we didn't. And, like I said, you win some, you lose some. The really bad, in my mind, was restructuring 8 freaking veteran contracts, which is just creating more dead money issues. And this is as this started creeping in, that's when I realized, son of a bitch, we're rolling this back. We're doing again what we keep doing, even though we had an opportunity this year to do something about it. The whole thing with the Carr restructure is once you did the standard restructure with him, you no longer needed 7 or 8 additional players to restructure to get under the salary cap. Depending on which ones you chose, you could have done it anywhere between 2 and 4. And he gave you the opportunity as you started restructuring, other veterans going, we're not restructuring you. In the case of some of them, Demario Davis is one that pops to mind. It was the last year of his deal. He was going to be voided in 2026. Let that thing play out if you can, and then make the decision in 2026. Are we going to, that's it? He might be ready to retire by then. You never know what's going to happen. But with that void years on it, you still have the chance to do basically what you did with Chase Young and Juwan Johnson. And that's all I'm going to say on that right now, because I don't want to spoil the ugly, although I think I just did. 8 total. Carr, McCoy, Granderson, Ruiz, Saunders, Shepard, Werner, Davis. I don't know what the final numbers are. I haven't looked, went in and looked at the restructures and see how the kick out is, but you knew it was 60, almost 70 million in dead money from Carr's restructure. That's going to show up next year as his cap number. So that's 7 more. And also, this is not counting Ramczyk. Ramczyk technically makes it 9, but that was all about getting him ready for his retirement. That regardless of our cap situation, that was going to happen exactly the way it happened. But if the other 7, if you're on average adding, say, 4 million to 5 million per contract of dead money, that's going to hit their cap number in 2026. Yeah, just those restructures, and especially when you add ramp checks, dead money, that's going to have you're 100 million plus in dead money all over again. Here we go again. And you had a chance to move on. The best example I can give you is restructure both Saunders and Shepard in conjunction with the Godshaw trade. So imagine Godshaw's trade, free agent signing, doesn't matter. But what you basically did was you brought a guy in. I had it as a good move, cost you very little, both in money and the ability to get him, draft capital. It's a 7th round pick next year. You already had cap savings in Saunders and Shepard. You could have cut one or both and created cap space. You could have restructured one if you felt like you needed to for some reason. You could have kept them both and just not done anything and not create a more dead money situation. Granted, there wasn't a lot of money involved, but it's kind of the principle of the thing on this is like, why are you doing this when it wasn't even necessary for you to restructure them? It's just insane. It's literally like Mickey's addicted to it and he can't help himself. And I mean, you can go through the list of that total 8, whether we decided to not bring Carr back, you pretty much restructured everybody at that point. But you moved your largest chunk of dead money and contract issues off. You brought him back, and like I said, you didn't have to do everybody. You could have prepared to move some of those guys off. But either way, you're whittling the number down, okay? You're giving yourself a chance to improve the roster because you're still creating some money to go into free agency. You gave Reed a good contract. You didn't go nuts on that one. A couple more like that, you would have been okay. You still would have, Mickey, when, yay, we want it to be competitive. That still would have got you competitive. But this, I honestly, I don't get it. I don't get it. And he proved, he could kind of operate smartly as far as the cap's concerned with the Reed contract. I don't think, anybody's looking at that and going, that's a major mistake. I think it was a good deal, really, really do. And even if you had the opportunity too of moving some of these, even some of the restructured contracts, but some of these, even if it was Chase Young and Juwan Johnson, who we're going to talk about in a second, and designated them post June 1st, because you still had the cap space at that point after just doing Carr and a couple of them to still sign the free agents and still potentially move some of that money, eat some of it this year, preparing the rest for next year, and then whatever else you were going to do. I mean, all this tells me he's rolling it back, which all tells me the man has not learned his lesson in 5 freaking years. And we're just going to have to keep dealing with it. But then what really blew my mind is the ugly. And I've got to be very specific on what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about the Young and Johnson contracts. Because at the time when they restructured Young first, brought up the point, there was $9 million of dead money that was going to hit yesterday. This was before all the other stuff we're talking about, and even signing Justin Reed and everything. They knew this was going to come if he didn't come back. So at the time, I don't know what the numbers were because it was blurry, but let's say they were 11 million under. As soon as the league opened, they were going to, 11 million under. As soon as the league opened, because of that, they would be 2 million under. Boom. So I get it. I said this in the Godshaw video going, it's a gamble. It may be a good gamble. That 17 mil was really high. And then we watched Bosa come in later in the day at 12 million or the next day. And it's like, that's a number I could have lived with more. Definitely a number I could have lived with more. But it was all about the production with him. Yeah, we get all the potential. We get he's 25 compared to using Bosa as a direct comparison, 30. Get all that. But at some point, you're like, you got to produce for that amount of money. And we run into too much of that over the past in the Saints. He's a good player, or the analytics tell us he's better than his production shows, which is Mickey looking past the numbers like he likes to do, or past the results. But at some point, if you don't produce tangible numbers, it doesn't help you. But said, well, it might be worth the gamble because of that $9 million dead money offset. And I don't remember if I said this specifically in the video or not, but I'm thinking, well, that means you can let Juwan Johnson walk and take his $6 million hit, because that way you don't have to take them both at the 15 plus million. I think Johnson was like 6.4, something like that. Then you hit with that contract and you paid him. Everybody was saying he's the top free agent tight end. And I'm like, well, maybe technically he is. I would say it was Evan Ingram, but whatever. There's really nobody else really anybody was excited about. It's kind of those two for the most part. Ingram actually signed a little cheaper. Ingram is a true number one tight end. And again, he's older, not by much, but he's a little older than Johnson. You don't need to do with him what we needed to do with Johnson. Johnson's always been a complimentary tight end. And this is the point I keep trying to prove to Northern, and he'll probably drop something in the comments about how our tight ends suck. But you mash two guys together with him and Moreau, or him and Cook when he first showed up, or whoever, to try to get what Evan Ingram is by comparison. And you could have paid Evan Ingram less money in theory. Come in, just take the hit, especially since you gambled on Young. Let's try not to gamble on Evan Ingram. Make it a little bit worse. The very last thing I saw that they did was they drafted Jake Stahl, the blocking tight end from Philly, which I get. Your head coach, offensive coordinator, run game coordinator, all probably really like the guy's blocking ability. And I saw a few clips on Twitter going, holy crap, yes, he can block. So I don't have a problem with that move. But I would rather, again, roll in with like an Ingram, Moreau, Stahl. And look, if Warren is there at 9, that does not stop you from taking him there and going, well, we've got 4 tight ends, we'll figure it out. But this, I mean, I can honestly say if Johnson, if we'd have brought him back on basically his previous deal, which is about 7 or 8 million. If you want to roll it back with almost the exact same deal, I'd have been okay with that, because you almost kind of break even on the dead money thing. Really aggravated me when I saw that Mike Gesicki was re-signed by who a lot of people before Ingram got cut. Oh, he's the second best guy in free agency. That's about what Gesicki re-signed with Cincinnati. Come on. Hell, we we technically overpaid at 2 spots. And for every Justin Reed type contract that he gives, it seems to be his MO when he rolls it back. He gives you 2 of this Johnson Young. And again, I could have lived with one. I'd have still been apprehensive either way. But like, okay, maybe I can see it, because a lot of moving parts here, a lot of stuff you're trying to work out. But both of them, so both of those deals coming in on the heels of Justin Reed, just to me, like wipes out Justin Reed's. With the good you did there, you offset. And I know there was dead money involved, and it would have been really tough if you let them both walk. But at some point, he's got to grow a pair of balls and go, we just can't do it. You're going to have to walk, and we'll figure it out from there. But here's the kicker. You restructured 8 guys you didn't have to restructure. So this didn't really come into play like you thought it was. So all said and done, right now, it sounds like an estimated $20 million over the salary cap for the Saints that's just sitting there. We could have ate the 9 and the 6.4 or 5 or whatever it was. No problem. Still have some money left over. Been about where we were last year, I think, rolling around at this point. I swear, it's just an addiction with him. And somebody said, and it's been kind of picked up on in different ways, but I want to say it was Ross Jackson or possibly Kirk Triplett that I was watching, but said, look, as long as Mickey's in charge, the Saints are going to deficit spend. And I've been rolling that around in my head for a day and a half, however long it's been. Seeing other people kind of talking about the same theme, and I'm like, yeah, I think that's what it boils down to, until Miss Gale puts her foot down and say, quit doing it or you're fired, and he doesn't, then fire him. we really are. This is the way he is going to operate. And I feel like, look, we're getting to the point where we're insane because here we go. We keep looking at these opportunities to stop doing this, and we're expecting him to do it. And it's like, no, he's going to do what he does. And apparently just hopes it works eventually, I guess, because you're stacking up too many years, Mickey. Where no, it's not working out like you thought it would. And here we are. Leave you with this last thought. I'm gonna call it the potentially ugly. About 3:20 yesterday, I sent a text out. That was right about the time I saw the official word that Cooper Kupp was cut by the Rams, which everybody knew was going to happen, but it was made official. And sent the text out to the family football Saints football group. They were going, how much you want to bet Mickey Loomis is going to jump all in and try to sign Cooper Kupp? And none of them responded and took the chance to bet against that. So I took, yeah, they probably all think the same thing. Heard a little bit. I was watching T. Bob and Hester this morning, and they kind of brought it up and talked about it as a potentially, yeah. I don't know what they were using as a source, but it's potentially, yeah, that sounds like that the Saints are interested in signing Cooper Kupp. Fundamentally, I'm not opposed to it on a lot of the reasons that they said, which is, look, right now it's two guys with some injury issues that are 1 and 2. You didn't re-sign MVS. You can't rely on all those rookies like you thought you could last year. Then they're second-year guys, and you couldn't rely on them. You probably get a really good one in the draft, especially at 9. That'll help you out. But bringing in a veteran makes sense. In theory. But the theory would be that it's got to be some type of team-friendly deal. And in his case, it might just be a year or two of kind of big guaranteed money. And I think that's where you start having the conversation of, I don't know. If he wants any type of long-term contract, look, he's 32, I believe, and he's had recent injury issues, and that's what he's looking for, then you got to walk away from the table. But he could make sense under the right contract. But I think the reality is, A, he's not going to agree to that contract, and B, and this is what really scares me, makes it potentially ugly, that thought will never even jump into Mickey's head, that this big cap space that he's created with all these moves is to drop a ton of money on a big name and bring him in. And arguably right now, that could be Cooper Kupp. Again, you get him on the cheap, not a problem. You tie yourself up into any big money over the next 2 years and guarantees and or long-term void years with a lot of dead money on it. Oh, I don't even want to think about it, but I am holding my breath on this one. So right before I signed off, went ahead, checked the Twitter machine. The Saints have signed 2 basically depth pieces. One is Isaac Yiadom. If you remember, we had him in 2023. Actually had to fill in as a starter on the outside at corner. Did a fairly good job. Frisco signed him last year. I don't believe he had any starts. I think he was like their 3rd corner. But gives us a depth piece, one that Brandon Staley is familiar with because he was with Frisco last year as I believe the assistant head coach. And also Will Clapp, former Saint interior offensive lineman, played guard and center at various times. Also had some time with the Chargers in 2023 where I believe he started 11 games, and that's Kellen Moore was the OC there. So very familiar all around. As long as Mickey didn't do any stupid overpayment contracts with either one of these, probably really good depth pieces because, you know, we've been talking an awful lot about the Saints' holes at starting positions, and there's massive holes in depth that they need to deal with, and you're not going to be able to address all of it in the draft. So you're going to have to find a few of these guys like this. So probably a good move overall. So first time here, please hit like, share, subscribe. YouTube loves all that stuff. Drop some comments down below. We'll especially make sure you hit notifications because with this free agency this period, it's always kind of topsy-turvy. You never know when we're going to have to just pop in and drop a video, or if it's an emergency, go live stream. But make sure you know when it's going to happen. So till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.